This is a webinar on creating unit learning menus. This is the section on entrees or anchor texts with their tasks. My name is Kelly Stair and I'm your presenter today. I'm the author of VoiceThread for Digital Education and QR Revolution. You can find other webinars from me at angrybunnypublishing.com and my email addresses are below. First, what's a learning menu? In case you haven't been following the rest of the series, I'll briefly go into what a learning menu is and then this idea of creating a learning menu for an entire unit of study. Learning menus are differentiation strategies that allow you to really meet students where they are and give students a choice in the different activities and processing skills and the way that they're going to both consume and produce information. The menu idea is to give students choice. There are many different learning activities that you use or that students can choose from, and so students can really choose which ones work best for them. Different points may be awarded for different types or levels of tasks, or you might have a point system in which you have a certain number of points for each of the tasks. All the points are the same. Students have to choose which task to do. The learning menu for a unit is divided into sections where you have beverages, appetizers, entrees, desserts, kind of like using an analogy of a culinary menu. And each of those sections has different learning activities involved with it. Students choose options from each section to do in order to earn their points. And then the options are the tasks or activities that the students complete in order to earn that set of points. If you're interested in seeing the rest of the webinars from this series, you can go to www.angrybunnypublishing.com. On the events page, you'll see all the upcoming webinars, and on the recent blogs or online workshops, you'll see all of the archived webinars from the month. So like I said, this one is creating a unit menu, and this is the entree part, the anchor text and the tasks that go along with that anchor text. There are different types of anchor text depending on what kind of class that you're running, and this works for any kind of classroom, anything with literacy strategies in it. So your science rooms, your social studies rooms, your language arts rooms, all of those will work really well with a unit-based learning menu with anchor texts involved in it. Anchor texts for informational classes could be textbooks, or they could be a lecture series. You could have a documentary or a film study. And then for literature classes, you have the novels or the biographies, or also the film studies. So we're going to start with informational anchor texts and talk about the different tasks that you can do as a whole in order to get students involved in learning activities with those texts. So first off, if you're using something like a textbook or you're using a lecture series, Cornell-style notes are really good places to start. Cornell-style notes have students break up a page into a notes section so that they identify the things that they're hearing or the things that they're reading, and then a key point section off to the left side where they pull from that the key points that they need to remember. And then at the bottom of the page, they'll do a summary of what that information was about, or what that lecture was about, what that chapter was about, or what that subchapter was about. In addition to straight Cornell Notes styles, for me personally, I think the personal connection really helps students anchor that information into something that they already know. It really helps develop schema. And so I would add a section maybe to the right-hand side if you're using notebook paper, or if you're using a Google Docs, just another sheet. Add a section of personal connections. This is like this, or I remember this from this, or I kind of think this would be similar to this thing that I did in this other class, or this other thing that I read, or this other lab that I did. And so you can really get students to connect the information to things that they already know. That's the only downside of Cornell Notes. They're very structured and organized, but they don't force students to make those connections to the things that they already know. And so that's one thing that I would add to the Cornell Notes style. If you're looking for more information on how to do Cornell Notes, you can go to this website right here, which is available on the PowerPoint as a live link. And some of the things that you can use Google Docs, you can use a video summary, you can use online textbooks and Scribble, and we'll talk more about those web tools that you can use in order to do Cornell-style notes with mobile devices. Another set of tasks to work with anchor texts is text annotation. Annotating text means that you make comments, you make connections, you write personal reflections, you highlight words that you don't know, you try to create patterns and find things that make sense to you, ask questions about things that don't make sense. So text annotation really is an active reading strategy where students are hands into the text. If you are looking for some more information on text annotation, this Harvard guide is excellent. And I had put the website right here. It's a guide for Harvard freshmen, so freshmen coming into Harvard University, and it really has some great tools for how to think about previewing text, how to think about annotating text, what to do with those annotations once you're done, like how to summarize, how to synthesize. And so as far as text annotation goes, if you're looking for a real quick guide of high-level text annotation, and obviously if you're talking about freshmen in high school, you'll build them up to this level. But this gives you the complete package of what great text annotation at the college level looks like. And so you can start helping build students towards that level. You can also, for informational anchor texts, you can create documentary guides with questions for discussions or questions to journal from, or other processing strategies like having little mini discussions with students, or having like a think, pair, share, or having you also have tasks for your fiction and literature anchor texts. So when you are using fiction or literature as anchor text, so say novels or movies, films, you have slightly different tasks that might go with them. So here are some of the tasks that you can do with fiction or with literature. You can do response journals. Response journals are excellent in that they have students connect the different pieces of the text as they're reading. And so students, it's kind of like annotating, but instead of writing directly in the book, you would have students write in a journal style. And so when they find something great, they will transfer it to their journals and then they will write about it. This is a really great processing task for students to do. They can pull quotes that jump out at them, or character development points, plot turns. They can make text-to-text, text-to-world, text-to-self connections. And so all of those different things that you can do in response to a piece of literature, you can put that into like a journal response form. And you do need to teach students how to do this if you're having them do it on their own, or you can use a study guide like is in the next two down, and have them kind of a guided response journal. If you're looking for more information on response journals for literature class, this website has a great set of information on it. Another thing you can do with literature is you can create literature circles. And whether your text is from a textbook or whether your text is a novel, you can create literature circles to kind of jump into analyzing that text from different perspectives. If you've never used literature circles before, literature circles ask students to read with a particular job in mind. So they might be the text connector, where you have to connect quotes or information from the text to other things that you've done. Some people might be the vocabulary developer, where they find interesting vocabulary words and define them for the group. You might have a summarizer, somebody that takes the text and puts it into a really short, complete summary. You might have a discussion director, somebody that has created some discussion questions to jumpstart a great discussion and then works to mediate that discussion in the group. So literature circles ask students to read a text with a job in mind and then come together and perform that job within their circle. Also, literature circles are a strategy that you really have to teach students. You have to model great literature circles, you have to show them what they're supposed to be doing, and then you have to give them a little bit of leeway to really have fun with it and make it an interactive, exciting experience. Literature circles really have the potential to get students motivated to read when they're not necessarily motivated. It's always good to start off with a text that's very motivating to get them into the literature circle so that they can start to feel comfortable with those different jobs and different roles. But then using literature circles for texts that are more difficult, that really could use some scaffolding and that help to have those conversations, to ask questions of people who are your peers and not have to ask in front of an entire class, because literature circles tend to be smaller, 5 to 6 people. And so getting those kind of familiar relationships going lets students really jump in and ask questions and dig deep into a text and get a lot of meaning from it. And so literature circles are great to use with literature anchor texts. Another way to go, and I mentioned this earlier with the response journals, is to do some sort of study guide. Study guides, I feel that study guides really need to be kind of an interactive thing. It shouldn't be a list of questions, you answer the questions, you turn in the questions. It should have some kind of interaction, either with small groups of students or with a forum that students can use to discuss. If you have discussion questions, an in-class discussion, you can, if you're using a novel, you might have discussion time in class. If you're using a film, you might break the film so that you have maybe a 15-minute segment and then some discussion questions and students answer those questions. Whether you have students write their answers or speak their answers or video their answers, doesn't matter. That's part of the differentiation process. But having study guides, don't ever just give students a handout and say, okay, or a packet of papers that have questions for every chapter and say, all right, read this book and answer all of these questions, because they're not going to do it. They're going to look up those answers and be bored with it. It really needs to be interactive in the processing of new information. And it has to be exciting for them. I mean, it doesn't have to be a roller coaster, but it needs to be more than busy work. One place that you can go to get great study guides and great study questions is Shmoop. Shmoop has incredible literature discussion guides, and they do a great job of helping students summarize and see character traits and see themes, and also give students discussions or opinion statements that they can then try to argue through and play out. So Shmoop is fantastic. You can also search for film or novels by their name. Just do a Google search or a Bing search, and then you can find pre-written guides. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. It's completely up to you if you want to spend money or not on those. Some of them are good and some of them are not so good. So make sure that your students are interested in the tasks that you're doing. I always find that that's a good way to judge whether a study guide is any good or not. Finally, we want to use some web tools. We want to use technology so that students can really be interactive and share and collaborate and use technology purposefully. So with all of those different anchor tasks, we have different tools that you could use to promote those tasks. If you're doing some kind of notes, like the Cornell note style system, you can have students use Word documents or Google Docs to share them. Google Docs are fantastic. You can also use a software tool called Lino, and Lino is an online sticky note corkboard. And your sticky notes can be text or videos or images, and so you can create like a corkboard full of sticky notes with all of these different ideas on it. I use Lino for projects, I use Lino for journaling, I use Lino for note-taking, and students love it. They can make a new corkboard every day, or they can continue a corkboard and add things to it. They can peel off the notes when they don't need them anymore. They can peel them and stick them on other corkboards. So it's a really fantastic and interactive tool for students to use, and the best part for me is that there's an app for phones. And so if students have a smartphone, they can do Lino right on their phone, and it is incredible. So they can do it on a web browser also, but they can do it on their phones, and so they can have their phones out taking notes and finding resources and pulling all of those things together. It's really easy for students to move notes around, and so if they just take a bunch of notes, they can go back through and organize those notes just by moving the little post-its around. And it's a fantastic tool. My students love it. Journals. If you're doing journals, you can also use Lino for journals, like I said. You can use a PowerPoint or Word document or the Google Docs presentation or document form. You can use a tool called VoiceThread. I actually wrote a book about VoiceThread. It's an amazing tool for hosting multimedia conversations in the cloud. And VoiceThread lets you post images or PowerPoint presentations or documents or videos, and then it lets you talk about those. So students can, if you want a more interactive journal, students can put their journal entries on there or even their notes onto a VoiceThread and then invite other students to comment on those notes or on those journals. And so they might have some journals that they're like, man, I really want other people to see this, to comment on this. And VoiceThread makes it very simple and very easy for students to be interactive with that journal writing process. You can also, if you have students that are familiar with it, or if you yourself are familiar with it, you can have students create YouTube channels for their journals. And so they can do like a video journal. This is great for students that don't like to write, that have great thoughts and that you want to work with organizing those thoughts and developing those thoughts, but they just do not like to write. VoiceThread is a great tool for this also, because they can present and then they can use the audio feature or the webcam feature to make comments, and they don't have to actually write out the comments. Now, obviously, you want students writing at some point, but if that's what it takes to get kids to start thinking deeply about topics, I say let them talk it through. Let them webcam, let them do YouTube videos, let them do however they are comfortable presenting that information, working through it, processing that information. And then later you can say, okay, you did this great thing, now let's organize it. Okay, now let's write it out. And that might be the steps that get them into being comfortable with writing. Web tools for discussions. You can do a lot of different things with student discussions, and those discussions can be big, massive discussions, or they can be small class discussions. If you're familiar with wikis, you can do a wiki, and they're free. You can do a VoiceThread discussion. Like I said, VoiceThread lets you post slides of images or videos or whatever, and then have people comment on them. So people can discuss whatever it is that that original slide is all about. And everybody can have their own discussion voice on there. You can also make a free forum and organize that forum by different topics or maybe different chapters, and say, all right, you need to post to the forum, to the discussion forum for this, and that could be the tasks that students do to interact with the text. Annotation. Annotation is a huge deal. Annotation is all about digging deep into the text and using great reading strategies and writing on the text. Sometimes you don't have text that students can write on. For example, you might have these big textbooks that are $100 each. You don't want students writing all over those, and Post-its can get kind of expensive if you're writing in an entire 300-page book. And so one thing that you can do, if you have textbooks online or if you have access to that, you can use a tool like Scribble or Annotate, which are annotation software tools. They're free, they're online. Scribble is for any website. Annotate can be used for any website or PDF file. And what they do is they allow you to put sticky notes, highlight text, change text color, organize your changes in a legend so that you can tell what's what. So you can have students highlight words that they don't know and then go back and define them, or use context clues to define them. You can have them ask questions, you can have them make connections. All of those great reading strategies and annotation strategies, you can do those online, and it's completely paper free. And so students can do those on their own. They can do it on their cell phones, they can do it on their computers, and then they have access to it wherever they go. So they don't have these big massive things just like, I had sticky notes, they were stuck there, but now they're not there. And so everything is online and everything is very secure. The other great thing about Scribble is that it creates a library of URLs specific to what you did. So if, for example, I pulled this website that I'm on right now, and I wanted to make some comments. So I put my little sticky notes and I highlight some things, I make comments. When I hit save, Scribble saves it as a separate URL. So that site is no longer active, but it also means I don't have to depend on that site to still be there to see my notes. So especially for text that might go away, it's great to have a Scribble account so that those websites are there forever and your comments are there forever. Another thing that you can do with web tools is you can use ebooks instead of actual physical books. I use ebooks all the time for as many different things as I can, and the reason is that my students can work from their cell phones. They never have to worry about forgetting their books or losing things. They have them on them all the time. Almost all of my students have access, and so I always make an option of using ebooks. And once students get familiar with the ebook format, they love it. At first, they're kind of hesitant if they haven't used ebooks before, but once they use them and get familiar with the site, they absolutely love it, and they love being able to use like a Scribble account or an Annotate account to mark up that text and not have to write in the book. The two ebook sites that I use the most are Project Gutenberg and Bartleby. Both of them have free ebooks for various topics, and it is fantastic. Another thing that you can use if you have access to it, and it might be a paid subscription, although a lot of textbook companies are offering online access as part of their textbooks, but textbooks online. And textbooks online are fantastic. You can also use textbooks online with a Scribble account or an Annotate account. And it is an excellent way for students to really interact with the text. Okay, so now that we've talked about your anchor texts and the different tasks that you can do and the different kind of text that you can use and the different web tools that you can use for those tasks, let's talk about creating the menu. So the menu itself is going to revolve completely around that anchor text as your entree. So you'll have different tasks that students can do in order to complete that entree task. Now, one thing that you might consider is using or allowing students to choose one for different chapters. Say you're doing a novel and it has 10 chapters. You might say each chapter has to have a task, but you can choose which task depending on which chapter. So if you pick a task and you do it for the first chapter and you're like, this is boring, I wish I would have chosen something else, you can switch. And so each chapter you can switch off if you choose. Or if students are like, I really like doing this online journal, then they can do that for all of those chapters. And so that's one way to differentiate as far as creating your menu. So when you actually make your menu and you say, all right, these are the activities that you can do in order to complete this entree to get the points for that, you can differentiate by two different things. You can differentiate by the text itself and by the task, which includes the process and the product that students will create. All right, so if you're differentiating by text, that might be you have novels in print, you have novels online, you have novels as audiobooks, and that allows students to choose that way. You might have alternate comprehension levels of a film. So if it's an informational text and you're studying a particular idea, you might have a film that's at the high school level, and then you might have a film that's at the middle school level, and you let students choose which one that they want to use. Now, obviously, they might get a little bit different information in the film as far as amount of information and level of comprehension, but if you have students who are working at a middle school level and you give them an upper high school level text, they're not going to be able to do that on their own. And so you have a choice. You can either take that high level film and break it down and scaffold it for them, which is another alternative, or you can give them a text that they can read on their own and get the information that they need. So either one of those will work. You can also use different textbooks that are at different reading levels, or different novels that are at different reading levels. If you're reading, say, the Odyssey, there are some really great graphic novels that can go with the Odyssey. And so you might have students who want to read the graphic novel, and do their tasks with that, and then maybe use some pieces from the original as supplementary texts that they can work on improving their reading skills. That's another way to do that. Different textbooks at different reading levels. While this might be a little frustrating to get them right on, if you have text, like say you have text from your middle school, you have text from your high school, you might have both of those texts available so that students can read at the reading level that they need to be at. There's nothing worse for students than going into a science class and not being able to do science because they can't read the text and because the reading level is too high. The sentence structure doesn't work for them, the vocabulary is too much. That's very frustrating, and students shouldn't be put in that position. If they're reading at a low level, obviously your goal is to get them reading at a higher level, but until they do, you need to make sure they can get access to the information at the level that they're reading. And that also might include giving them a film version instead of a text version for different things. You can also differentiate your learning menu or your unit menu by the tasks, which include the process, that's the learning strategies and how students process information, and the product, that's how they show that they've learned that information. So some ways that you can differentiate by task include whether a student is working individually or collaboratively. And collaboratively can be with a partner, with a small group, with the whole class. It can be discussion forums. It can be just a single, talking in class. But whether students work as individuals or collaboratively is definitely a way to differentiate. Students might also differentiate with what type of task they're doing. So are they taking notes using the Cornell system? Are they doing personal journals? Are they doing reflective journals? Are they doing discussions online or discussions in class? So the different tasks that students can do, which I went through before, those are ways to differentiate the process of learning information. And then you might also differentiate the product, what shows that they've learned it. So different ways that they can show that they have interacted with your entree, with your anchor text, is to say maybe they have one that's in print, so they write something. Or it's online, and so they draft something online. They can make videos. They can make audio commentary. They can do presentations. They can do things online. Or they can do a combination of those, like using VoiceThread. You can create print text, but you can also create audio text, and you can create video text as well, and you can put them all together. So let students differentiate how they want to process their information and how they want to show that they've processed that information. That's what we've got for entrees on learning menus. Up next Thursday, 2 days from now, we'll be working with desserts, and that's our summative assessments. We'll be talking about using essential questions to make good summative assessments. We'll be talking about differentiating by the products that students are being assessed on, so the different ways in which you can incorporate learning styles and multiple intelligences to create different products and have students really own their work, and then the rubrics involved in assessing those. My name is Kelly Stair. I'm a writer and teacher consultant with angrybunnypublishing.com. If you like this presentation, you'll love my ebook, VoiceThread for Digital Education, which is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other ebook retailers. You can also look for QR Revolution coming November 25th, and you can pre-order that from my Smashwords account for 40% off. Be sure to join me every Tuesday and Thursday for more great teaching digital literacy strategies.